I was 7 months pregnant when my mother told me I wasn't worth wasting good insurance on. Those words, cold and final through the phone speaker, still echo in my mind 3 years later. But this story isn't about that phone call. It's about what happened when she came crawling back, desperate and broken, expecting me to forget everything. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The winter I almost died started like any other Chicago December. Brutal, unforgiving. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you question every life choice that brought you to the Midwest. I remember standing at the window of our tiny studio apartment on the south side, watching the snow pile up on the fire escape, thinking about how different my life had turned out from what everyone expected. My mother had stopped speaking to me 4 months earlier. My father pretended I didn't exist. My brother Marcus sent me one text after my wedding that said, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." And then nothing. David and I had met 2 years before at a community college evening class. I was there taking business courses, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life after dropping out of Northwestern. He was there taking accounting, trying to build something more than just a mechanic's life. We ended up as study partners, then friends, then something more. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked. He didn't care that my family had money or that I grew up in a mansion in Lake Forest. He saw me, just me, not the disappointing daughter or the black sheep or the girl who was supposed to marry someone from the right kind of family. My mother, Scarlett, had been grooming me my entire life to marry well. Country club events, debutante balls, introductions to the sons of her friends, boys with trust funds and family names that opened doors. She had a list, I swear to God, an actual list of acceptable families. The Hartfords, the Bellinghams, the Prescotts. When I brought David home for dinner that first time, wearing his one good suit that was a little too tight in the shoulders, I watched her face freeze into that polite mask she wore when she was disgusted but too well-bred to show it. "A mechanic," she said later, after he left. Her voice was silk over steel. "You're dating a mechanic." "He's more than that," I tried to explain. "He owns his own garage. He's building something." "Your father built a Fortune 500 company," she cut me off. "Your brother is a vice president at 28. And you want to throw away everything we've given you for a man who changes oil for a living?" The fight that followed was epic. Doors slamming, voices raised. My father Richard sitting in his study, not even looking up from his newspaper as Scarlett laid out exactly what would happen if I continued down this path. No more tuition money, no more allowance, no more safety net. I would be on my own, and they would wash their hands of the whole embarrassing situation. I chose David. I chose love. I chose the possibility of building something real over the suffocating expectations of a life I never wanted. We eloped 3 months later at City Hall, with David's parents as witnesses. His mother cried happy tears and hugged me like I was already her daughter. We had a celebration dinner at a small Italian restaurant in their neighborhood, and I felt more loved in those few hours than I had in years of formal dinners in my parents' dining room. But choosing your own path doesn't mean it's easy. David's garage was struggling. He had 2 employees and barely enough work to keep the lights on. I got a job at a furniture store, then started picking up freelance design work on the side. We lived in that studio apartment with the rattling radiator, and the neighbor upstairs who played heavy metal at 3 in the morning. Some nights we ate ramen because it was all we could afford. But we were happy. Genuinely, honestly happy, in a way I had never been in my parents' perfectly decorated, emotionally empty house. Then I got pregnant. Unplanned. Terrifying. Wonderful. David cried when I told him, and then immediately started planning. We needed a bigger place. We needed better insurance. We needed to save money. He started taking on extra shifts, working sometimes 16 hours a day. I kept working at the furniture store until I was 6 months along and my feet swelled so badly I couldn't stand anymore. That's when everything fell apart. The contractions started on a Tuesday night in December. David was at the garage, working on a rush job for a client who needed their car back by morning. I was home alone, trying to put together a crib we had bought secondhand, when the first pain hit. Sharp, sudden, taking my breath away. I called David immediately, and he dropped everything to come home. But by the time he got there, I was on the floor, unable to stand. The ambulance ride was a blur. I remember the paramedics, young guys who looked barely old enough to drive, checking my vitals and talking in that calm, measured way that medical professionals use when they're actually really worried. I remember David holding my hand so tight I thought my bones might break, his face pale and scared in the flashing lights. I remember the snow coming down so thick, the windshield wipers could barely keep up. County General Hospital was understaffed and overwhelmed, like it always was. Budget cuts had closed 2 other public hospitals in the area, and now this one was trying to handle the load of 3. We waited in the emergency room for 45 minutes, me in a wheelchair with David pacing beside me like a caged animal, before they finally got me into a room. The room itself was old, probably built in the 70s and not updated since. The paint was that industrial beige that's supposed to be calming but just looks depressing. The ceiling tiles were water-stained. The monitor next to the bed looked like it had been repaired about 100 times, held together with medical tape and hope. The doctor who examined me was Dr. Chen, a resident who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Dark circles under his eyes, scrubs that were wrinkled like he'd been wearing them for multiple shifts. But his hands were gentle and his voice was kind as he checked me over, asking questions, taking notes on a clipboard with a chewed pen. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," he said finally. "That's good. But you're having Braxton Hicks contractions. False labor. It's common at 7 months, but we want to monitor you for a few hours to make sure everything's okay." A few hours turned into overnight. David stayed with me, sleeping in the chair beside my bed, his long legs stretched out and his work jacket pulled over himself like a blanket. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting monitors, asking the same questions over and over. "Are you in pain? Rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Any bleeding? Any fluid leaking?" I answered mechanically, watching the clock on the wall tick past midnight, then 2 a.m., then 4. That's when I called my mother. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I thought the situation would scare her enough to care. Maybe I was hoping that impending grandmotherhood would soften her. Maybe I was just desperate and scared and wanted my mom, even though she had made it clear I wasn't her daughter anymore. The phone rang 4 times. I almost hung up. Then her voice, sharp and annoyed. "Hello? Mom?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Weaker. "I'm at the hospital. I'm 7 months pregnant and something's wrong and I'm scared." The pause that followed was long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Long enough to hear David shift in his sleep. Long enough to hope, foolishly, that she might surprise me. "You chose this," she said finally. Each word was perfectly enunciated, perfectly cold. "You chose to marry that mechanic. You chose to get pregnant before you were financially stable. You chose this life. So now you deal with it. Mom, please. I'm asking for help. The hospital bills are going to be thousands of dollars and we don't have good insurance and I just need—" "You need to grow up," she cut me off. "You made your bed, Emma. Lie in it. Our insurance is for our family's emergencies, not for the consequences of your poor decisions." I heard my father's voice in the background, muffled through the phone but clear enough to understand. "Don't waste the good insurance on her. She made her choice. Let her live with it." "Mom," I tried one more time, but she was already talking again. "When you're ready to admit you made a mistake, when you're ready to leave that man and come home and do things the right way, then we can talk. Until then, don't call this number again." The line went dead. I sat there in that hospital bed, the phone still pressed against my ear even though the line had gone dead. The dial tone droned on, a flat mechanical sound that somehow felt louder than my mother's voice had been. My hand was shaking so badly the phone rattled against my ear, but I couldn't make myself lower it. Some irrational part of my brain kept thinking that if I just held on a little longer, if I just waited one more second, she would call back. She would say she didn't mean it. She would say she was sorry, that she was scared and said things she didn't mean, that of course she would help me, that I was her daughter and she loved me. But the dial tone just kept going. That horrible, endless sound. Finally, my arm got tired. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the screen like it was something foreign, something I didn't recognize. My mother's name was still there in the call log. Duration, 3 minutes and 42 seconds. That's how long it took for her to destroy what was left of my hope. Less than 4 minutes to make it crystal clear that I was alone in this. The monitor beside my bed kept beeping, that steady rhythm that was supposed to be reassuring. "Your heart is beating. The baby's heart is beating. You're both alive." But the sound felt mocking now, like it was counting down to something inevitable. Each beep was a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still existing in a moment I desperately wanted to escape from. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered, that high-pitched hum that gets into your skull and stays there. One of the bulbs was dying, making the light strobe slightly, on and off, on and off, like the universe couldn't decide whether to let me see clearly or leave me in darkness. The light was too bright and too harsh, washing everything out, making the whole room feel sterile and cold and utterly empty. I wanted to close my eyes against it, but I couldn't. I just kept staring up at those lights, watching them flicker, feeling like I was flickering too. Out in the hallway, I could hear life continuing. Normal life, other people's lives. A nurse laughed at something, that easy sound of someone who wasn't carrying the weight of the world. Another voice, deeper, was discussing lab results. Words I couldn't quite make out, but the tone was casual, professional, unbothered. Someone walked by pushing a cart that squeaked with every rotation of the wheels, metal on metal, a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. A doctor was being paged over the intercom, calm and routine. Code something, room something. All these people doing their jobs, going about their days, living in a world where mothers helped their daughters and families took care of each other, and everything made sense. I felt like I was watching it all through glass, like I was separated from that normal world by something invisible but impenetrable. They were all out there, living and laughing and working, and I was in here, alone with my dying phone and my failing body, and the crushing realization that the people who were supposed to love me most in this world had just chosen not to. My hand moved to my stomach, to the place where my baby was growing, where she was depending on me completely. She had no idea what kind of world she was about to be born into. No idea that her grandmother had just decided she wasn't worth helping. No idea that her grandfather thought we were both a waste of good insurance. She was in there, safe and warm and trusting that I would protect her, and I had never felt more powerless in my entire life. The tears came then, hot and sudden, spilling down my cheeks before I could stop them. I wasn't a crier, never had been. My mother had trained that out of me early. Crying is manipulative, Emma. Crying is what weak people do when they can't handle their emotions properly. But I couldn't stop now. The sobs came from somewhere deep, somewhere I didn't know existed, shaking my whole body. Each one hurt, physically hurt, making my ribs ache and my throat raw. I tried to be quiet about it. Tried to muffle the sounds against my hand because I didn't want the nurses to hear, didn't want anyone to come in and ask what was wrong and force me to say the words out loud. My mother doesn't love me. My parents have abandoned me. I'm not worth saving. I couldn't say those things out loud because then they would be real, undeniably real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. My other hand was still clutching the phone, gripping it so hard my knuckles had gone white. I looked down at it, at my mother's contact photo that I had never bothered to change. It was from 3 years ago, at some charity event she had dragged me to. She was wearing a designer dress and her best smile, the one she used for cameras and strangers. The one that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. I had thought back then that maybe if I just tried harder, if I was just better, smarter, more successful, made choices she approved of, that smile might become real. That she might look at me with actual warmth instead of that calculating assessment she always wore. How stupid I had been. How incredibly, painfully naive. The phone screen went dark, my mother's face disappearing, and I was left staring at my own reflection in the black mirror of the glass. I looked terrible. My face was blotchy and swollen from crying. My hair was a mess, stuck to my forehead with sweat. My eyes were red and empty. I looked like someone who had just lost something vital, something essential, and in a way I had. I had lost the fantasy. The hope. The belief that somewhere deep down, buried under all the criticism and disappointment and conditional love, my mother actually cared about me. That fantasy was gone now. Burned away by her cold voice and colder words, and sitting there in that hospital bed, 7 months pregnant and scared out of my mind, I realized I was grieving. Not for my mother as she was, but for the mother I had always wanted her to be. The mother who would drop everything to be here. The mother who would hold my hand and tell me everything would be okay. The mother who would move heaven and earth to protect her daughter and grandchild. That mother didn't exist. Maybe she never had. And accepting that, really accepting it, felt like dying a little. The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls seemed to be closing in. The air was too thick, too hard to breathe. The beeping of the monitor got louder, more insistent, like it was screaming at me. The buzzing of the lights became a roar. The sounds from the hallway felt like they were mocking me. All those people with their normal problems and normal families and normal lives that made sense. I wanted David. I wanted him so badly it was a physical ache. I wanted his arms around me and his steady voice telling me we would figure this out. But he was at work, working a double shift because we needed the money, because we were trying to save up for the baby, because he was trying so hard to build a life for us. I couldn't call him yet. Couldn't make him leave work early again. Couldn't be one more burden on top of everything else he was already carrying. So I sat there alone, in that cold hospital room with its flickering lights and beeping machines and the ghost of my mother's voice still echoing in my ears. I sat there and felt something inside me break. Not cleanly, not all at once, but like a crack spreading through glass, slow and inevitable and permanent. I had always known, on some level, that my mother's love was conditional, that her approval came with strings attached, that I was valued not for who I was but for what I could do, what I could achieve, who I could become. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones are two completely different things. And in that moment, I felt it, really felt it. The truth that I had been dancing around my entire life. I was not enough. I had never been enough. And I never would be enough. Not for her. The worst part, the part that made me feel like I was drowning, was that I still loved her. Even after everything. Even after the cruelty and the rejection and the casual dismissal of my life and my baby's life. Somewhere, deep inside, that little girl who used to make Mother's Day cards and practice piano for hours to earn a word of praise was still there, still hoping, still wanting her mother to love her back. But that little girl was going to have to grow up, fast. Because the woman lying in this hospital bed couldn't afford to hope anymore. Hope was a luxury I no longer had. From now on, I had to deal with reality. And the reality was that I was on my own. David and I were on our own. And our baby was going to be born into a family that didn't include grandparents who cared. That should have made me angry. It should have filled me with rage. And maybe it would, later. But right now, sitting in that hospital bed with tears drying on my cheeks and my hand on my belly, all I felt was grief. Overwhelming, crushing grief for all the things I would never have, for the mother-daughter relationship I had always wanted, for the grandmother my baby would never know, for the family I had always dreamed of having. The door opened and a nurse came in, young and tired-looking, carrying a blood pressure cuff. She took one look at me and her expression shifted from professional efficiency to genuine concern. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "Are you okay? Is the pain getting worse?" I opened my mouth to tell her the truth. To say no, it's not the pain, it's my mother, it's my family, it's the fact that I just realized I'm completely alone in the world. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I heard myself say, in a voice that didn't sound like mine, "I'm fine, just tired." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she was kind enough not to push. She just took my blood pressure in silence, made a note on my chart, and squeezed my shoulder gently before leaving. That small gesture of kindness from a stranger broke something loose in my chest. Because that nurse, who didn't know me, who had probably seen hundreds of patients this week alone, showed me more compassion in that moment than my own mother had shown me in 7 months of pregnancy. And that, more than anything else, told me everything I needed to know about where I stood. David woke up about 20 minutes later. He took one look at my face and knew immediately what had happened. He didn't say anything at first, just moved from the chair to the bed, wrapping his arms around me as carefully as he could with all the wires and monitors in the way. I cried into his shoulder, huge gasping sobs that I had been holding back since the phone call ended. He just held me, one hand stroking my hair, letting me break apart completely. When I finally stopped crying, when there were no more tears left, he pulled back just enough to look at me. His eyes were red, his jaw was tight. This was cold fury, the kind that burns so deep it doesn't need to be loud. "I swear to you," he said quietly, "you will never have to bow your head to them again. Whatever we have to do, however hard we have to work, you will never need them for anything. I promise you that." I wanted to believe him. I tried so hard to believe him. But in that moment, lying in a hospital bed with no money and no support and no idea how we were going to survive, it felt like an impossible promise. They released me the next morning with instructions to rest and come back if the contractions got worse or more frequent. We took a cab home because David's truck was still at the garage, and neither of us had the energy to deal with getting it. The apartment felt even smaller when we got back, the walls closing in. David made me tea and soup from a can, and I pretended to eat while staring out the window at the gray December sky. 3 days later, the fever started. I woke up drenched in sweat, my whole body aching like I had been hit by a truck. The room was spinning. David was already gone to work, trying to make up the hours he had missed when I was in the hospital. I managed to get out of bed, made it to the bathroom, and threw up everything in my stomach. When I looked at myself in the mirror, my face was flushed and my eyes were too bright, and I knew something was very, very wrong. I called David. He came home immediately, took one look at me, and called 911. This ambulance ride was worse than the first one. I was barely conscious, drifting in and out, hearing voices but not understanding words. At some point I realized I couldn't feel the baby moving, and I tried to tell someone, anyone, but my mouth wouldn't form the words. Back at County General, they rushed me into a private room this time. Suddenly there were doctors everywhere, not just residents but actual attending physicians, all moving fast and talking in medical terminology I didn't understand. Infection, sepsis, fetal distress, antibiotics. I caught fragments, pieces of a puzzle that added up to something terrifying. Dr. Martinez was the one who finally sat down and explained it to me in terms I could understand. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked dark hair pulled back in a bun, and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many years of working, too many hours. But her voice was gentle, her manner calm, and I clung to that calmness like a life raft. "You have a severe bacterial infection," she said, pulling her chair close to my bed. "We're not entirely sure how you got it, but it's aggressive and it's spreading fast. You need immediate treatment with a very specific antibiotic, or you're going to develop sepsis. Sepsis is life-threatening, for both you and the baby." "How immediate?" David asked. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking where he gripped the bed rail. "Within the next 24 hours. "And the antibiotic?" Dr. Martinez hesitated. "This is where it gets complicated. The medication you need is expensive, very expensive, and it's not typically covered by basic insurance plans. We're looking at around $8,000 for the full course of treatment, not including the hospital stay, which will be at least another week. $8,000. The number hung in the air between us like a physical thing. We had $347 in our savings account. We had a high-deductible insurance plan that would cover maybe 30% if we were lucky. We had nothing, less than nothing. David asked about payment plans. Dr. Martinez explained that the hospital had programs, but they took time to process, and I didn't have time. She said she would do what she could, make some calls, see if there were any grants or charitable funds that could help. But her expression told me that none of it would happen fast enough. After she left, David and I sat in silence. The monitors beeped. The fluorescent lights hummed. Outside the window, snow was falling again, thick and heavy. "Call them," he said finally. "David, no. M." His voice was quiet but firm. "I don't care about pride. I don't care about what they said or how they treated you. I care about you and our baby. Call them." So I did. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number again, knowing exactly how humiliating this was, knowing that I was proving her right about everything, knowing that I was betraying David's promise that I would never have to bow to them again. She answered on the second ring. "I thought I told you not to call." "I'm dying," I said flatly. There was no emotion left in me, no tears, no anger, just facts. I have sepsis. The baby might die. I need $8,000 for medication, or we're both going to die in the next 24 hours. Another pause, shorter this time, but somehow worse. "You're being dramatic," she said. "You've always been dramatic, Emma. You got sick and now you think it's the end of the world. You'll be fine. You're young and healthy." "Mom," the doctor said. "The doctor is trying to scare you into paying more money. That's what hospitals do. They inflate the costs and prey on fear. You probably just have the flu. I have a fever of 103. I can't feel the baby moving. The doctors are talking about emergency C-section if I don't respond to treatment. Then maybe you should have thought about all of this before you got pregnant with a man who can't afford proper health care for his family." The words hit like a slap. I actually felt my head snap back against the pillow. "You're right," I said quietly. "You're absolutely right. I made a terrible decision. I married a man you didn't approve of, and I got pregnant, and now I'm suffering the consequences. So let me suffer them. Let me die. Let your grandchild die. At least then you won't have to be embarrassed about me anymore." I hung up before she could respond. David was staring at me. "What did she say?" I told him. Every word. When I finished, his face was white. His hands were in fists. For a long moment he just stood there, trembling with rage, and I thought he might actually leave the hospital and drive to Lake Forest and do something we would both regret. Instead, he took a deep breath, unclenched his fists, and kissed my forehead. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We'll figure something else out." He spent the next 6 hours on the phone. He called his parents, who immediately wired us $2,000, everything they had in their savings. He called his boss at the garage and negotiated an advance on his paycheck. He called every friend we had, everyone he had ever worked with, explaining the situation and asking if they could spare anything. $20 here, $50 there, $100 from his old army buddy who was stationed overseas. Dr. Martinez came back around 8 p.m. "I made some calls," she said. "There's a program through the pharmaceutical company that manufactures the antibiotic. They can provide it at a reduced cost for emergency situations. Between that and what your husband has pulled together, we can start treatment tonight." I started crying again, but this time from relief. David thanked her about 100 times. She just smiled tiredly and said, "This is why I went into medicine, to help people, not turn them away." The antibiotic was administered through an IV. Within hours, my fever started dropping. By the next morning, I could feel the baby moving again, those little flutters that had terrified me with their absence. I stayed in the hospital for 8 days total. Dr. Martinez visited every day, monitoring my progress, adjusting medications, making sure both the baby and I were stable. On the day I was discharged, she pulled David and me aside. "I'm going to be very direct with you," she said. "You almost died. Both of you. If you had waited another 12 hours to come in, if we hadn't been able to get that medication, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." "I know," I whispered. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes that might have been understanding or might have been pity. No one should have to choose between their life and financial ruin. The system is broken. "I'm sorry you got caught in it." We went home to our tiny apartment with a plastic bag full of medications and follow-up appointment cards and a hospital bill that made my stomach turn. But we were alive. The baby was alive. That had to be enough. The next 6 weeks were a blur of doctor appointments and bed rest and David working himself to exhaustion. His parents visited every weekend, bringing groceries and cooked meals and sitting with me so David could get some sleep. My own parents remained silent. No phone call, no text, nothing. I checked my mother's social media once, just once. She had posted photos from a charity gala, dressed in a designer gown, smiling beside my father in his tuxedo. The caption read something about giving back to the community. I deleted the app after that. Clara was born on a cold February morning. Labor was fast and intense, only 4 hours from start to finish. David was there the whole time, holding my hand, coaching me through contractions, crying when they finally placed our daughter on my chest. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and David's brown eyes. When she wrapped her tiny hand around my finger, I felt something shift in my chest, some fundamental reordering of the universe. This, I thought, this is what matters. Not money or status or my parents' approval, this tiny human who was depending on us completely. This love that was so fierce it was almost painful. We brought Clara home to the apartment we had tried to make as ready as possible. David had painted her room a soft yellow, the color of early morning sunlight. We had a crib from a garage sale that he had sanded down and refinished. We had blankets and clothes from thrift stores and hand-me-downs from his coworkers. We had a changing table someone had put out on the curb that we cleaned up and painted white. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, built with our own hands and filled with love. The silence from my family continued. No card when Clara was born. No flowers. No phone call. My mother posted about Marcus's promotion at work, about the vacation she and my father took to Aspen, about the new addition they were planning for their house, but not a single word about her granddaughter. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I was better off without them. Most days I even believed it. But sometimes, late at night when I was up feeding Clara, I would think about my mother and wonder how she could just turn off her feelings like that. How she could know her daughter had almost died, had given birth, was raising a child, and feel nothing. Was it really that easy for her? Or was she lying to herself the same way I was lying to myself when I said it didn't hurt? David's garage started doing better about 6 months after Clara was born. Word had spread about his honesty and skill, and suddenly he had more work than he could handle. He hired another mechanic, then another. We moved out of the apartment into a small rental house with a yard where Clara could play when she got older. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom and a kitchen where the cabinets didn't quite close right, but it was better. It was progress. I started taking on more design work. At first, it was just friends of friends. Small projects like redecorating a bedroom or choosing paint colors for a living room. But I was good at it. I had grown up in a house where every detail was considered, where my mother had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on interior designers, and I had absorbed it all through osmosis. I knew fabrics and color theory and spatial planning. I knew how to make a space feel both expensive and comfortable. My first big client came through a referral from the furniture store where I used to work. A young couple who had just bought a condo in Lincoln Park and wanted help making it feel like home. The job paid $3,000, or more money than I had ever made from a single project. I was terrified I would mess it up, but I threw myself into it completely. Mood boards and fabric samples and furniture catalogs spread across our dining room table. David would come home from the garage covered in grease and find me still working, Clara asleep in her playpen beside me. The couple loved what I did. They recommended me to their friends, who recommended me to their friends, and suddenly I had a waiting list. I met Sam at a networking event for small business owners. She was a single mother, recently divorced, struggling to keep her head above water while raising her son alone. Her ex-husband had left her with nothing but debt and a lot of broken promises. I saw something of myself in her, or maybe something of what I could have become if David hadn't been the man he was. I hired Sam as my assistant. I taught her everything I knew about design, about working with clients, about running a business. She was smart and eager and grateful in a way that broke my heart a little. We became friends, real friends, the kind who showed up when things got hard, who celebrated each other's victories and mourned each other's losses. Clara turned 1. David's parents drove up from Indiana and we had a small party in our backyard. A homemade cake, balloons from the dollar store, a plastic kiddie pool that Clara was fascinated by. It was nothing fancy, nothing like the elaborate first birthday parties my mother used to throw for Marcus and me, with hired entertainers and catered food and a guest list that read like a social register. But watching Clara splash in the water, hearing her belly laugh when David tickled her feet, I realized I didn't want fancy. I wanted this. I wanted real and messy and filled with people who actually loved us. My business continued to grow. By the time Clara was 2, I had enough steady work that I could officially call myself self-employed. I rented a small studio space, just 1 room above a coffee shop, but it was mine. I hung a sign on the door, Emma Chen Interiors. David took a picture of me standing in front of it and I posted it on social media. The first post I had made in months. My mother never liked or commented, neither did my father or Marcus, but other people did. Friends from college I hadn't talked to in years, David's family, clients and colleagues, people who actually cared. I hired 2 more women, both single mothers who needed flexible work and a boss who understood what it was like to balance childcare and career. We built something special in that little studio, a community, a support system. We covered for each other when kids were sick. We celebrated each other's successes. We created a space where it was okay to not be perfect, where it was okay to admit you were struggling. David expanded his garage to a second location. He was working less crazy hours now, had a manager he trusted to handle things when he wasn't there. We had savings in the bank. We had health insurance that actually covered things. We had built a life from absolutely nothing, and it was good. It was really genuinely good. Clara turned 3 on a Saturday in late April. The weather was perfect, sunny and warm with that particular quality of light that only happens in spring. We had the party in our backyard, which David had spent weeks getting ready. He built Clara a sandbox and a swing set, painted a hopscotch grid on the patio, planted flowers along the fence. We invited Clara's friends from preschool, Sam and her son, David's coworkers and their families, David's parents who stayed for the whole weekend. The backyard was full of kids running and screaming with joy, parents chatting over paper plates of cake, music playing from a speaker David had set up. I was in the kitchen refilling juice boxes when Sam came to find me. "There's a phone call," she said. Her expression was odd, somewhere between concerned and confused. "Your mother?" The world seemed to slow down. I hadn't spoken to Scarlett in over 3 years. Not since that phone call in the hospital when she told me I was being dramatic. I had wondered sometimes if she would ever reach out, if she would ever want to meet her granddaughter. But as time passed, I had stopped expecting it. It was easier that way, less painful. I walked inside to where I had left my phone on the counter. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. "Emma," my mother's voice said. Not Em, the nickname she used to use. Emma, formal, distant. We need to talk. About what? I kept my voice neutral, emotionless. I could hear the party continuing outside, could hear Clara laughing, could hear David calling out something about presents. It's your father. She paused, and I heard something in her voice I had never heard before. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. He's very sick. We need help. For a moment, I couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. My father was invincible. Richard Harrison, self-made millionaire, the man who built a fortune from nothing, the man who once told me weakness was a choice. That man couldn't be sick. What kind of sick? I asked. The company went under. Her voice was smaller now, shakier. The investments didn't pan out the way Richard thought they would. We had to declare bankruptcy. We lost the house, most of our assets. And Richard, the stress of it all. He had a heart attack 6 months ago, then another one. Now he has congestive heart failure and he needs surgery, but we don't have insurance anymore and the hospital is demanding payment up front, and Emma, we don't have the money. The words tumbled out in a rush, breaking on the last few words. I stood there in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, trying to reconcile this desperate woman with the cold, composed mother I had known my entire life. How much do you need? I asked, even though I already knew I shouldn't be asking. $40,000 for the surgery, maybe more with recovery and medications. I know you're doing well now. I've seen your business posts online. David's garage is successful. You have money now. And there it was. Not I'm sorry we abandoned you. Not I'm sorry I told you your life wasn't worth saving. Not I'm sorry I've never met my granddaughter. Just, I know you have money now and a clear expectation that I would hand it over. I see, I said quietly. Emma, we're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything. You owe us. I hung up. David found me still standing there 5 minutes later, staring at nothing. What happened? I told him. All of it. The bankruptcy, the heart attacks, the money they needed. The fact that my mother had seen my social media posts but never once commented, never once reached out except for this. What are you going to do? He asked. Nothing. But he knew me too well. He could see the conflict in my face, the way part of me, the little girl who still wanted her parents' approval, was already calculating whether we could afford it, whether we should help them despite everything. The calls started that night, first from my mother, then from Marcus. Text messages piling up on my phone. Some pleading, some angry, some veering into threats. You're going to let your own father die. You're heartless. After everything we did for you. The family that raised you needs you and you're turning your back. I blocked my mother's number after the 5th call, then Marcus's after the 10th. But they were persistent. They called from different numbers. They sent emails. Marcus even called David's garage, trying to get him to convince me. She owes us, Marcus said. David played me the voicemail later. Our father gave her everything, put her through school, gave her opportunities, and now when we need her, she's playing this victim card because mom and dad didn't approve of her little rebellion? That's bullshit and you know it. David deleted the voicemail without responding. The really hard part was how much it messed with my head. I would be playing with Clara, happy and present, and then suddenly I would think, what if he dies and I could have prevented it? I would be working on a design project and find myself frozen, staring at my computer screen, wondering if I was being cruel or if I was finally standing up for myself. Sam noticed. David noticed. I tried to hide it, but the doubt was eating at me from the inside. A week after the first phone call, I went to see a therapist. I had been thinking about it for a while anyway, processing everything that had happened, but this pushed me over the edge. Dr. Reeves was in her 60s, with white hair and bright blue eyes, and a way of asking questions that made you really think about your answers. Do you want to help them? She asked during our second session. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. They're my parents. But the other part of me remembers lying in that hospital bed, pregnant and scared and sick, and my mother telling me I wasn't worth helping. Those two things can both be true, Dr. Reeves said gently. You can acknowledge that they're in a difficult situation and still recognize that you don't owe them anything. You especially don't owe them when they have never apologized, never taken responsibility for the harm they caused you. But what if he dies? What if he does? Will you be responsible for that? Or will he be responsible for the choices he made that led to this situation? I didn't have an answer for that. 2 weeks after the first call, my mother showed up at my studio. I was working late. Sam had already left to pick up her son from aftercare, and I was alone when I heard the door open. I looked up expecting a client and saw Scarlett standing there. She looked older. That was my first thought. She had always been so carefully maintained, hair colored monthly, skin treatments and spa days, expensive clothes that fit perfectly. Now her hair was more gray than blonde, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was thinner, almost gaunt, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. No makeup. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She looked like someone who had been worn down by life, all the polish stripped away. "Emma," she said. Just my name. Not a greeting, not an explanation. Just my name hanging in the air between us. "You need to leave." I stood up from my desk, putting it between us like a barrier. "Please, just 5 minutes. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You made yourself very clear 3 years ago, and every day since then." She flinched but didn't leave. "Your father is dying. This isn't manipulation or exaggeration. He had another heart attack last week. The doctors give him maybe 3 months without the surgery. You're the only one who can help us. What about Marcus? He's a vice president. Surely he has money. Marcus has a gambling problem." She said it flatly, without emotion, like she was reporting the weather. "He's in debt up to his eyeballs. His wife left him 6 months ago. He's living in our guest house." She paused. "The guest house we're about to lose because we can't make the mortgage payments anymore." I processed this information slowly. My perfect brother, the golden child, was a gambling addict who had lost everything. There was a part of me, a petty part, that felt a flicker of satisfaction. Then shame at feeling satisfaction. Then anger at feeling shame. "I'm sorry things didn't work out the way you planned," I said. "I genuinely am, but that doesn't change what you did to me." "I know." Her voice cracked. "Emma, I know. I was wrong." The words hung there. I was wrong. Not "I'm sorry," not "I apologize," not "please forgive me." Just "I was wrong." The absolute bare minimum acknowledgement. "Wrong about what, specifically?" I asked. "Because I need to know that you actually understand what you did." She looked down at her hands. "About the way I treated you. About your marriage. About everything." "Try again," I said coldly. "Tell me specifically what you did wrong." She looked up, and I saw tears in her eyes. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Nothing. I shouldn't have refused to help you when you were pregnant. I shouldn't have said those things about David. I shouldn't have cut you off. And... She blinked. "And what? And do you think you should have met your granddaughter? Do you think you should have called after she was born? Do you think maybe, just maybe, you should have checked if I survived that infection? Do you think you owed me an apology before you needed money?" Her face crumpled. I was angry. "I thought you were throwing your life away. I thought you would fail and come crawling back and I could say, 'I told you so.' But you didn't fail. You built something real and I was wrong and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She was crying now, really crying, and part of me wanted to go to her, to comfort her the way daughters are supposed to comfort their mothers. But I stayed where I was, hands flat on my desk, keeping that physical distance between us. "How much have you actually thought about me in the last 3 years?" I asked quietly. "How many times did you wonder if Clara was healthy? If she was happy? If she looked like me or David? Did you think about her first birthday? Her first steps? Her first words?" Scarlett wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, mascara smearing. "Every day. I thought about you every day. But you never called. You never sent a card. You saw my posts online but you never commented, never reached out. You thought about me every day but you did nothing. Do you know how that sounds?" I was ashamed. Her voice was barely a whisper. "So your shame was more important than my daughter. Your pride was more important than knowing if I lived or died. I deserve that." She straightened up, trying to compose herself. "I deserve your anger. But your father doesn't deserve to die because I was a terrible mother." "Wasn't he a terrible father?" I asked. "He was the one who said not to waste good insurance on me. He's the one who couldn't even look at me after I married David. Where is he in all this? Why isn't he here begging for help? He doesn't know I'm here. He thinks Marcus is handling it. His pride won't let him ask you for anything." "How convenient," I said. "So you get to be the one who swallows her pride, who looks like she's trying, while he sits at home being too proud to face me. Does he even want my help? Or would he rather die than accept money from his disappointment of a daughter?" Scarlett didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I want you to leave," I said. "I have work to do." "Emma, please." "No." I walked around the desk toward her and she took a step back. "You had 3 years to be sorry. 3 years to reach out. 3 years to meet your granddaughter. But you only care now that you need something. That's not love. That's not family. That's just desperation. I can't watch him die, she whispered. Then don't watch. But don't ask me to save him when you were willing to let me die. Her face went pale. That's not fair. You didn't die. You were fine. I almost died. The doctor said if I had waited 12 more hours, I would have died. The baby would have died. And you told me I was being dramatic. You told me I was exaggerating. You dismissed me like I was a child making up stories for attention. I didn't know it was that serious. Because you didn't ask. You didn't care enough to ask. I took a breath, trying to calm the rage that was building in my chest. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. When I was in that hospital bed, terrified and in pain, when I called you begging for help, you had a choice. You could have helped me or not helped me, but either way you could have been kind. You could have said, I'm sorry you're going through this even if you weren't going to help financially. You could have called the next day to check on me. You could have shown 1 ounce of human decency. But you didn't. You were cruel, deliberately cruel, and that's what I can't forgive. Scarlett was sobbing now, loud gasping sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, Emma, please help us. I'll do anything. Anything except admit what you really did. Anything except actually take responsibility. I pulled a business card from my desk drawer and held it out to her. This is a charitable organization that helps people who can't afford medical care. They work with hospitals to negotiate payment plans and find funding. Call them. She took the card with shaking hands. This is it? This is all you're going to do? What did you expect? That I would write you a check and we'd all pretend nothing happened? That we'd be a happy family again? I expected my daughter to have compassion, and I expected my mother to love me unconditionally. I guess we're both disappointed. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift in her expression. The sadness hardened into anger, into resentment. You've changed. You're cold now, hard. No, I said softly. I'm just not available to be hurt by you anymore. There's a difference. You'll regret this. When he dies, you'll regret this for the rest of your life. Maybe. Or maybe I'll regret that I wasted so many years wanting approval from people who were never going to give it. Maybe I'll regret not cutting you off sooner. She turned and walked toward the door, her steps unsteady. At the threshold she stopped, her hand on the doorframe. I hope you never know what it's like, she said without turning around, to watch someone you love die because you don't have the money to save them. I already do know, I said. The difference is, the people who were supposed to love me didn't care. She left without another word. I stood there in my studio for a long time after she was gone, staring at the closed door, waiting to feel something, relief or satisfaction or even guilt. But I felt numb, completely numb. I called David. He picked up on the first ring. She was here, I said. I'll be right there. He was at the studio in 15 minutes, probably broke several traffic laws getting there. He found me sitting on the floor with my back against the desk, staring at nothing. Tell me what happened, he said, sitting down beside me. I told him everything, every word of the conversation. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Do you want to help them? He asked finally. Forget about what I think or what they deserve or any of it. What do you want? I don't know. I really truly don't know. That's okay. You don't have to know right now. What would you do? I asked. If it was your parents? He considered this carefully. My parents would never put me in this position. But if they did, if somehow they ended up desperate and asking for help, I'd like to think I'd help them. But your situation is different. My parents never told me I wasn't worth saving. They never let me suffer out of spite. So I don't think I can answer that question. I feel like either choice is wrong, I said. If I help them, I'm betraying myself. If I don't help them, I'm the villain in everyone's story. You're not the villain, David said firmly. You're the person who survived despite them. That doesn't make you responsible for saving them now. We went home. Clara was already asleep. David's mother had put her to bed. I checked on her, watching her chest rise and fall, one hand curled under her chin. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. I thought about how I would do anything to protect her, anything to keep her safe and healthy and loved. And then I thought about how my own mother couldn't do that for me. The next few days were torture. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly. I kept playing the conversation over and over in my head, wondering if I had been too harsh, if I should have handled it differently. Doctor. Reeves helped me work through it in therapy. You're experiencing a grief reaction, she said. You're grieving the mother you wish you had, the mother who would have shown up for you 3 years ago. The mother who would have loved you the way you needed to be loved. That mother doesn't exist, and accepting that is painful. So what do? I asked. You accept it. You mourn it. And then you move forward with your life. But what about my father? What about him? She leaned forward. Let me ask you something. If your father wasn't sick, if your family wasn't in trouble, would you want them in your life? I thought about it, really thought about it. No, I wouldn't. Then why would you let their crisis change that? You didn't create this situation. You didn't cause his illness or their bankruptcy. They made choices that led them here, just like you made choices that led you to where you are now. The difference is, you don't get to escape the consequences of their choices, but they want to escape the consequences of theirs. It felt harsh when she said it like that, but it was also true. Marcus called me directly 3 days later. I had forgotten to block his new number. His voice was different than I remembered. Rougher, tired. Em, he said, we need to talk. I don't think we do. Yes, we do. Look, I get it. Mom and Dad were terrible to you. They were wrong. But are you really going to let Dad die to prove a point? It's not about proving a point, I said. It's about the fact that for 3 years, none of you cared if I was dead or alive. Now you care because you need something. That's not family. That's convenience. You're being selfish. I laughed. It surprised me as much as it surprised him. I'm being selfish? Marcus, I almost died. Clara almost died. Where were you? Where was your concern? Where was your phone call checking if I was okay? I didn't know it was that bad. Because you didn't ask. None of you asked. You just assumed I was fine because it was easier than admitting you were wrong. He was quiet for a moment. You're right. Okay? You're right. We were wrong. All of us. Is that what you want to hear? I want to hear that you're sorry. That you actually understand what you put me through. Not because you need money now, but because you genuinely care. I do care, he said. But there was something in his voice that told me he was lying. Or at least that he cared less than he wanted me to believe. You're my sister. Then act like it. Act like I matter for reasons other than my bank account. What do you want from me, Em? You want me to grovel? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't support you. I'm sorry Mom said those things. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. There. Now will you help? Do you mean any of that? I asked quietly. Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said and hung up. 4 weeks after my mother's visit to the studio, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, had been screening all my calls, but something made me pick up. Is this Emma Chen? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Yes. This is Patricia Moreno from Silver Oaks Hospital. I'm calling regarding Richard Harrison. I understand you're his daughter? My stomach dropped. Yes. I'm calling to inform you that Mr. Harrison passed away this morning at 6:45 a.m. I'm very sorry for your loss. The words seemed to echo strangely, like they were coming from very far away. How? His heart. The damage was too extensive. We made him as comfortable as possible in his final hours. Was anyone with him? His wife and son were here, yes. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. There are arrangements that need to be made. Would you like me to transfer you to our family services department? No. My brother can handle it. I understand. Again, my condolences. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, waiting to feel something. Sadness, regret, relief, anything. But there was just emptiness. David found me an hour later, still sitting in the same spot. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just sat down next to me and took my hand. He's dead, I said. I know. Marcus called the garage. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted the hospital to tell you first. Thought it would be better coming from them than from Marcus. I nodded slowly. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. However you feel is okay, David said. There's no right way to grieve someone who hurt you. The funeral was 3 days later. I saw the obituary in the paper. Richard Harrison, beloved husband and father, successful businessman, pillar of the community. It listed Marcus and Scarlett. It didn't mention me. That hurt more than I expected it to. Even in death, I was erased. I didn't go to the funeral. Sam offered to come with me for support. David said he would go with me if I wanted. Dr. Reeves said it might give me closure, but I couldn't. I couldn't stand in front of a room full of people who would look at me with judgment, who would whisper about the daughter who let her father die, who would never know or care about what really happened. Instead, David and I took Clara to the park. It was a beautiful day, warm and sunny. Clara played on the swings and the slide. We had a picnic. David pushed Clara on the merry-go-round until she was dizzy with laughter. I took pictures on my phone, capturing these ordinary, perfect moments. This is what matters, I thought. This is real. The letter came a week after the funeral. Plain white envelope, my mother's handwriting. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with only a few lines written in Scarlett's careful script. Emma, I hope someday you'll forgive us. We never thought you would survive. We never thought you were strong enough. We were wrong about everything, especially you. Your father asked about you at the end. He said he was sorry. Mom, I read it 3 times, looking for something more, something deeper. But that was it. No real explanation, no acknowledgement of Clara, no understanding of what they had put me through. Just a vague hope for forgiveness and a second-hand apology that I would never be able to confirm or question. What are you going to do with it? David asked. I don't know yet. Clara solved that problem for me 2 days later. She found the letter on my desk, brought it to me with curious eyes. What's this, Mommy? Just an old letter, sweetheart. Can we plant it? Like we planted the seeds last week? Plant it? Yeah! She was excited now, bouncing on her toes. You said when things die, they help new things grow. Can we plant the letter and grow something pretty? Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, during a soft spring rain that made everything smell like earth and possibility, Clara and I went out into the garden. David had planted rose bushes the year before, and they were blooming now, deep red petals that reminded me of hope and resilience. We dug a small hole at the base of the largest bush. Clara placed the letter carefully in the earth, patting it down with her small hands. What will grow here? She asked. Something beautiful, I told her. Something better than what we're burying. We covered it with soil, watered it with the garden hose. Clara giggled when the water splashed her feet. We went inside, muddy and damp, and David made us hot chocolate even though it was warm outside. We sat on the couch, Clara between us, watching the rain through the window. I felt lighter. Actually lighter. Like I had been carrying something heavy for years and had finally set it down. Dr. Reeves called it symbolic closure. David called it letting go. Sam called it badass. Clara just called it planting day. Whatever it was, it worked. Time moved forward the way it always does. The business grew. David opened a 3rd garage location. We bought a house, a real house with 4 bedrooms and a big backyard and a kitchen where all the cabinets closed properly. Clara started kindergarten. We got a dog, a rescue mutt named Biscuit who followed Clara everywhere. My mother tried to contact me twice more over the next year. Once through Marcus, once through a cousin I hadn't spoken to since childhood. Both times the message was the same. She wanted to meet Clara. She wanted to apologize properly. She wanted to be a family again. I didn't respond to either message. It wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about protection. Protecting myself from people who had proven they couldn't be trusted. Protecting Clara from grandparents who would never love her the way she deserved. Protecting the life we had built from the toxicity that had nearly destroyed me. Sam asked me once if I thought I would ever forgive them. We were in the studio, working late on a big project, and somehow, the conversation had turned personal. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean letting them back into my life. Do you think about them? Sometimes. Less than I used to. Mostly I think about how grateful I am that they're not part of Clara's life. She'll never know what it's like to feel like she's not good enough. She'll never wonder if her grandparents love her because they've never given her a reason to wonder. That's the gift their absence gave her. Sam nodded slowly. You're stronger than you think. No, I'm exactly as strong as I needed to be to survive, that's all. But survival isn't the same as living. For a long time, I had been surviving. Going through the motions. Building my business and raising my daughter and being a wife and doing all the things you're supposed to do. But there was always this shadow, this weight of what my parents had done, what they hadn't done, what they might do if I let them back in. Planting that letter was the beginning of something new. Not forgiveness exactly, not even closure in the traditional sense, but release. Letting go of the hope that they would ever be the parents I needed them to be. Accepting that some relationships are too broken to fix, too toxic to maintain, too painful to keep trying. Clara is 5 now. She's funny and smart and kind in ways that constantly surprise me. She doesn't ask about her other grandparents anymore. She stopped asking after I explained, in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and the loving thing to do is to keep distance. She accepted it the way children accept things, with a simple okay and a move on to the next topic. David's parents are grandma and grandpa, the only grandparents she needs. They visit every month, spoil her with toys and attention, show up to every dance recital and soccer game. They're what grandparents should be. I think about my mother sometimes, especially on Mother's Day or Clara's birthday. I wonder if she thinks about us, if she regrets her choices. If she tells herself a story where she's the victim and I'm the ungrateful daughter. Probably. People rarely see themselves as the villain of their own story. Marcus sent me a card this year on Christmas. Just a card, no message inside except his signature. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to say. The business is thriving. I have 6 employees now. All women. Most of them mothers who needed someone to believe in them the way Sam believed in me. We've been featured in local magazines, won awards for our designs. I never posted about it on social media where my family could see. Those accomplishments are mine, not meant for people who didn't support me on the way up. Here's what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the family you're born into is just the prologue to your story, not the whole book. Sometimes love has to be conditional, and boundaries have to be walls, not fences. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who will never see your worth. I didn't need my parents' approval to be happy. I didn't need their money to be successful. I didn't need their love to know I was worthy of love. I had David. I had Clara. I had Sam and a business I built with my own hands, and a life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely mine. 3 years after that phone call in the hospital, I'm not the same woman who begged for help. I'm stronger. I'm fiercer. I'm free. And that little girl who learned to plant hurt in the ground so flowers could grow? She's teaching me every day that sometimes you have to let the old things die so new things can live. My mother hoped I would forgive her. Maybe someday I will. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means releasing the pain so it stops poisoning your future. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer. Every time Clara laughs in our backyard, every time David kisses my forehead before leaving for work, every time I look at what we built from nothing, I get a little bit closer. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the life you wanted to build? Have you ever walked away from people who refuse to see your worth? And if you have, how did you find peace with that decision? Drop your stories in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if this resonated with you. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.